Coming up on this Monday edition of Newsline at noon, the first parliamentary audit of government offices under President Park Geun-hye begins with issues like the government's scaled-down pension plan and the delayed fighter jet project coming under close scrutiny. Korea agrees to 2 landmark currency swap deals with Indonesia and the UAE, worth more than $15 billion. The deals are expected to reduce Seoul's dependency on the greenback and help globalize the Korean won. Plus, as the countdown begins to a possible US default, the bipartisan deadlock continues over the terms of raising the debt ceiling. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
Where's the best place for bibimbap?
Les Jeux Olympiques d'hiver se dérouleront-ils à Pyeongchang?
هل أنتم حقاً سابع أكبر مصدر في العالم؟
この歌手は誰ですか？你好，最近哪部电视剧的人气最旺？
Korea is attracting interest from around the world. The more you know, the more you want to know. Dynamic Korea.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom, and we kick things off with domestic politics and a development that could signal the start of a new period of cooperation.
The ruling Saenuri Party has asked the main opposition Democratic Party to join it in declaring an end to political wrangling and pledging to redirect focus on the livelihoods of the people. At a meeting of senior party members Monday, ruling party floor leader Choi Kyung-hwan proposed the two parties' leadership meet to make the announcement. On day one of the first parliamentary audit under the Park Geun-hye administration, Choi promised to conduct a thorough and fair inspection of all government offices and affiliated organizations. The DP spokesperson, in response, said it was not the right time for the leadership meeting, then called on the ruling party to focus on conducting a fair audit of the government. Both the ruling and opposition sides say they will focus on improving the livelihoods of the people over the next 20 days of government audit. Will the political bickering really come to an end? Our Park Ji-won tells us more.
This year's parliamentary inspection of government offices kicked off on Monday and will last 20 days, finishing early next month. 16 standing committees at the National Assembly will look into 630 government offices and institutions, the largest number ever. The nation's ruling and opposition parties both said Sunday that they will focus on the inspection itself and refrain from political bickering, but it looks like that could be wishful thinking. Analysts say they expect the two sides to get sucked into political point scoring, considering the inspection is starting almost 1 month late due to the previous deadlock at the National Assembly, and this is the first official parliamentary audit under the Park Geun-hye administration. Issues related to allegations that the nation's intelligence agency meddled in last year's presidential election and the missing 2007 Inter-Korean Summit transcript are likely to rise to the surface. Lawmakers are also expected to grill the nation's financial regulators for their lack of supervision regarding the recent debt-ridden Dongyang Group crisis that caused huge losses to investors. 12 standing committees, including Legal, Welfare, Defense, began their inspections on Monday. The Legislation and Judiciary Committee is delving into diverse issues, such as those related to former Prosecutor General Choi Dong-uk's resignation and allegations left-wing lawmaker Lee Seok-gi was formulating plans to topple the government. While the Welfare Committee scrutinizes the government's scaled-back pension plan, the Defense Committee is probing fissures about issues at the Defense Ministry, including the delayed fighter jet project and its ability to deal with cyber attacks. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Korea is taking further strides into emerging markets. Over the weekend, Seoul signed a currency swap deal with the UAE, and agreed to sign another with Indonesia. Officials say the deals will help reduce Korea's dependency on the US dollar and facilitate the globalization of the Korean won. Hwang Sung-hee has the details.
Korea and Indonesia have agreed to sign a currency swap deal worth $10 billion. The agreement was reached during a meeting in Washington on Saturday local time between Korean Finance Minister Hyun-ho-seok and his Indonesian counterpart. The currency swap line will expire in 3 years, but can be renewed upon agreement. At the same meeting, the head of Korea's central bank, Kim Jung-soo, signed a 3-year currency swap deal worth $5.4 billion with the United Arab Emirates. The agreements can be used in settling payments for their bilateral trade. Indonesia is Korea's 8th largest trading partner, with their trade volume valued at around $30 billion last year. Most of Korea's imports from the Southeast Asian nation are natural resources, such as iron and gas. Around 1/10 of Korea's crude oil imports last year were shipped from the UAE, Korea's 3rd largest trading partner among Middle Eastern countries. Both deals are expected to facilitate Korea's imports of natural resources and also help the globalization of the Korean won. The Korean government wants to use currency swap deals with emerging countries to settle payments for trade in an effort to reduce its dependence on the US dollar. The Korean finance minister hinted of additional agreements to come, saying Seoul is in talks with a few more emerging countries that are rich in resources and have strong trade links with Korea. For emerging countries, a currency swap deal with Korea provides a second line of defense amid an acceleration in the outflow of foreign currency, triggered by growing fears over the U.S. Federal Reserve's plan to taper its massive monetary stimulus program. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Korea's finance minister says the U.S. Federal Reserve is well aware of the effects of its stimulus program tapering could have on emerging economies and will decide on the timing accordingly. Speaking to Korean reporters following the World Bank IMF annual meeting in Washington, Hyun-ho-seok said he was told by U.S. officials that the reduction of the $85 billion monthly bond purchase would begin once the U.S. unemployment rate drops to 6.5% and inflation is in the 2% range. Hyun added the Fed assured him of boosting the so-called forward guidance policy of better communicating with market participants to ease uncertainties about the stimulus reduction.
An energy consultant group has urged the government to step back from its previous plan of expanding its reliance on nuclear energy to keep dependency on nuclear power below 30% for the next 2 decades. It also proposed the government raise electricity fees to reduce excessive consumption. Kim Min-ji has the details.
Korea has been advised to maintain its dependency on nuclear energy below 30% for the next 20 years. A committee for the National Energy Master Plan on Sunday urged the government to maintain the ratio in the range of 22 to 29% by 2035. The figure compares to the 41% proposed under the previous administration that put high emphasis on nuclear power for its energy policies.
The plan focuses on balancing safety and public acceptance, as well as economic aspects and environmental issues.
Korea's current ratio sits around 26%, which means the government should maintain its current level of reliance. The committee also proposed the government raise electricity fees as part of efforts to curb excessive consumption while lowering costs of alternative energy sources such as liquefied natural gas to reduce dependency on nuclear power. The government has also been advised to reduce electricity consumption by at least 15% during the 20-year period, while maintaining its dependence on renewable energy sources at 11%. The draft comes in the wake of mounting safety concerns after Japan's Fukushima nuclear accident and recent corruption scandals at the nation's nuclear plants. A public institution allegedly fabricated test results for a device used to prevent nuclear accidents, while the government has also found hundreds of forged test certificates for parts used in the nuclear reactors. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Korea's top business groups will see their maturing bonds expire by the end of next year, with the amount edging up to 30 trillion won. That's about $28 billion, raising concern about their financial health. Local market researcher Chaebol.com says the country's top 30 conglomerates are holding a total of $75.4 billion in debt. Of the total, $27 billion in corporate bonds will come due in 2014. SK Group, the country's third largest business group, has the most bonds set to mature next year at $2.9 billion, followed by Hanjin Group and Lotte Group. Market watchers say local conglomerates could face a liquidity crisis amid the protracted slump in the country's bond market. Now, Korea's smartphone market, which had the highest level of ownership in the world last year, is expected to post negative growth for the first time ever this year because of market saturation. Strategy Analytics says the local market for smartphones is expected to decline 14% to around 26.3 million units for this year, from last year's 30.7 million units. The market will pick up again starting next year through 2018, but with a small growth of only 30 million units. The research company attributes the negative growth forecast to market saturation and government regulations against phone companies providing excessive subsidies to new customers.
For your fill of Korean and international news, join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. Newsline at noon.
Session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
There were some signs of progress on the fiscal crisis in Washington on Sunday as Senate leaders tried to find a solution to the twin problems of the ongoing government shutdown and the fast-approaching deadline for lifting the debt ceiling on Thursday. But progress was slow, with no indications that the fight won't go right down to the wire. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the latest.
Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid said he had cordial but fruitless telephone talks Sunday with Republican Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. The two sides agreed the debt ceiling should be raised and the government reopened, but they remain at odds over the terms for doing so, including the duration of the debt ceiling increase and the levels of funding for the government. Reid wants to raise the borrowing cap for next year with no conditions attached, while McConnell is seeking concessions in exchange for raising the debt limit until January 31st and funding the government through March.
The conversations were extremely cordial, but very preliminary, of course. Nothing conclusive. But I hope that our talking is some solace to the American people and to the world.
The U.S. government has been partially shut down earlier this month after Republicans in the House refused to approve a funding bill unless Democrats in the Senate agreed to delay the president's signature health care law. Meanwhile, the October 17th deadline for Congress to increase the government's debt limit or go into default is fast approaching, and any deal that might be reached in the Senate in the coming days will still have to be approved by the Republican-controlled House of Representatives. While House Speaker John Boehner vowed Sunday not to raise the debt ceiling without a, quote, serious conversation, he warned that there are not enough votes in the House to pass a debt limit without conditions attached. Meanwhile, the White House says it will not negotiate until the government is reopened and the borrowing authority for the nation's $16.7 trillion debt is raised. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
A senior Iranian official says Tehran will not transport its enriched uranium stockpile outside the country in a clear rejection of Western demands. Iranian state media quotes Deputy Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi as saying shipping the material abroad would be a red line his country is unwilling to cross. The international community has been demanding Tehran stop purchasing uranium enriched to 20% and start sending some of its stockpile overseas. The minister also said his country will neither surrender nor suspend its enrichment process, but it would be open to negotiate the form, amount and levels of enriched uranium. Iran and the permanent members of the UN Security Council plus Germany are scheduled to resume talks on the Iranian nuclear issue in Geneva this week. The International Committee of the Red Cross says 6 of its workers and 1 Red Crescent volunteer have been abducted by gunmen in northwestern Syria. A Red Cross spokesperson said that the 7 were kidnapped on Sunday in Idlib province while returning to Damascus. The team had been dispatched to the area last Thursday to assess the medical situation and how to provide medical aid in the area.
More than 90 people, mostly women and children, have been killed in a stampede at a Hindu festival in central India. Local officials say most of the victims were crushed to death after panic broke out on a bridge in Madhya Pradesh state. Others died as they were forced to jump off the bridge. Officials say the stampede could have been triggered by a rumor that the bridge was about to collapse. Stampedes are a common occurrence in India, with most of the incidents blamed on poor crowd control techniques and planning by the authorities. And staying in India, a powerful cyclone slammed into the country's eastern coastline over the weekend, killing at least 18 people and forcing thousands to flee their homes. Rescue operations are still ongoing in the state of Orissa, and Cyclone Phalanx, the deadliest storm to hit India in over a decade, has destroyed millions of dollars worth of crops. The final death toll from the storm is expected to climb further, but officials say a mass evacuation of nearly 1 million people appears to have saved many lives. Cyclone Phalanx is the deadliest storm to hit India since a 1999 cyclone that also hit Orissa and killed 10,000 people.
Korea and Russia are scheduled to conduct a joint naval exercise in waters off Russia's eastern city of Vladivostok this week. The Korea Coast Guard says the drills, which start Monday and run through Friday, will be focused on bolstering the two sides' maritime security and search and rescue capacity. And on Wednesday, Korea's 5,000-ton guard ship and some 90 special forces and even police officers will take part in the drills. The annual exercises have been held since 2001 to better exchange information and cooperate in areas of maritime security and countering international crime. The Seoul National School for the Blind boasts a history spanning over 1 century. The tireless work of its teachers and staff has opened countless doors for people who are visually impaired. The school now hopes to further advance the field of special education with state-of-the-art IT technology. Paulie reports.
Here at the main campus for the Seoul National School for the Blind, Lee Dae-hyun is flying through his reading assignment on his device, which is called a refreshable braille display. The high school junior is able to easily reference textbooks and other electronic documents, as well as quickly make notes on the braille terminal in spite of his visual impairment. Another specialized learning device being utilized at the institute magnifies and increases the contrast of reading materials. It's hard to imagine that just 10 years ago, these IT devices were considered science fiction. In the past, school texts were transcribed into braille by hand using a metal printing press that often produced heavy and cumbersome books.
The advent of the Braille Information Terminal has saved a lot of time in making textbooks. As a result, I'm more efficient since I don't need to carry many books. It makes my life easier.
It's just one of the many ways Seoul National School for the Blind is integrating cutting-edge technology into its curriculum. The school recently celebrated its centennial anniversary, and its administration is firmly focused on advancements in special education.
As we move forward, while also looking back over the last 100 years, I strongly feel the need to improve the future of special education for young people. And with these new ideas in special education, we're exploring new directions in education for the visually impaired.
The development of such high-tech devices is expected to enable visually impaired students to competitively explore a diverse range of academic and professional fields. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Now, if you are of average weight but have a little extra around the middle, like me, you could have something called central obesity. This condition often occurs in people who are relatively slim on the outside but fat on the inside and carries a higher risk for serious health problems such as diabetes or high blood pressure. Our Son Jung-in reports.
Kim Jun-soo works in an office and rarely gets up from his desk while he's at work. The 36-year-old has a bit of a potbelly, but considers himself to be healthy as he is 170 centimeters tall and weighs 68 kilograms, which is an average weight for his height.
I am confident about the way I look because I'm fairly thin for my height, so I think I'm healthier than other people who are the same age as I am.
But most doctors would say otherwise. In fact, Mr. Kim was recently diagnosed with central obesity, which is an excessive amount of internal fat around the organs. Doctors warn that people with central obesity like Mr. Kim are twice as likely to develop diabetes and 1.4 times as likely to have high blood pressure. That's because internal abdominal fat prevents insulin from regulating the amount of glucose in the blood.
If your level of intra-abdominal fat increases, your sugar level will also rise because the insulin isn't able to work properly and therefore more fat is produced, triggering a vicious cycle.
A man with a waist circumference of more than 90 centimeters, such as Mr. Kim, whose waist was 97.5 centimeters around, is considered to be centrally obese, and the figure is 85 centimeters for women. But the good news is that intra-abdominal fat can be burned off through exercise and by improving your diet. If it's hard for you to take extra time out of your busy day to go to the gym, you can also make some minimal changes in your daily activities that can help, such as taking the stairs instead of the elevator, or doing some simple isolation exercises for your stomach while seated at your desk. And keep in mind that alcohol, carbohydrates, and salty food all promote intra-abdominal fat. You will eventually become healthier and more fit, both outside and in. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Well, the weather over the weekend was beautiful, wasn't it? Well, let's see if that will continue this week by checking in with our Lee Ji-han standing by at the Weather Center. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, guys. Now, as Yusun said, the weather was so nice over the weekend, and it seems like a lot of people were taking advantage of it.
Yes, it was very nice over the weekend, and as I recall, actually, this is the peak season for the full foliage.
Right. And I found something really interesting. It was that in autumn, the leaves don't turn a color. They actually lose their green colors because they stop making chlorophyll. And then we see their other colors like yellow and orange. Now, some trees like maples have a kind of sugar that makes the leaves red, but eventually all the leaves become dry, crunched, and brown. So let's enjoy the fall colors while we can. Now, the forecast for today is looking absolutely great. We'll have temperatures hovering at about 25 degrees Celsius across the nation, with only a few clouds passing by later in the day, but right now it's looking absolutely clear. But tomorrow's weather will be quite different. We'll wake up to mostly cloudy skies with rain starting in Gangwon province before spreading to the rest of the country. While the rainfall will be spotty, so you won't even need to have an umbrella with you, but the rain will bring a chill to the air as the afternoon highs will be 6 to 7 degrees lower compared to today. Meanwhile, we'll see the morning lows drop every day starting today and by Thursday. So we'll be starting the day in the single digits, but temperature will be jumping back to the seasonal norms by the weekend. With that, it's time to take a look at the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul will get up to 23 degrees Celsius, which is 73 degrees in Fahrenheit, while Gwangju and Busan will be topping out at 26 under lots of sunshine. Now let's see how other regions are looking. Jeju and Daejeon should hike up to 26 as well, while Mount Kumgang stays in the cooler side at 15. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. That's all for me today. Enjoy your lunch break, and back to Mark and Yusan in the studio.
Thank you very much, Jion, for your weather report there. And that's pretty much all from us now. But you can always catch up with what's been happening on our website, which can be found at arirang.co.kr/news.
Do stay with Arirang TV for more on the day's headlines.